Henry Lawson had always lived a quiet life on his ranch. At 60 years old, his days were simple but full of purpose. Each morning, he rose at dawn to feed the cattle, repair fences, and check on the wide fields that stretched as far as the eye could see. Over the years, he had learned to appreciate the small rhythms of life, the sun rising over the hills, the sound of calves calling to their mothers, and the wind rustling through the tall grass. His wife had passed away many years ago, leaving him alone with his memories and the ranch that he loved. Though he sometimes felt the sting of loneliness, Henry had built a peaceful existence. He had friends in the town nearby. But mostly, his life was defined by the land and the animals he cared for. One warm summer morning, Henry decided to visit the county fair. It was the annual event where farmers and ranchers came together to trade livestock, share tips, and enjoy a break from the routine. Henry wasn't usually one for crowds, but he wanted to sell a few calves and perhaps see some familiar faces. As he drove his old pickup truck down the dusty road, he admired the golden sunlight falling on the rolling fields. The smell of hay and earth mixed with the faint scent of barbecue and cotton candy from the fairground. Even at 60, Henry felt a little thrill in being out among people, though he kept it to himself. When he arrived at the fair, he quickly set up his stall with the calves he wanted to sell. People wandered by, stopping to admire the animals, ask questions, or simply exchange greetings. Henry, ever polite but reserved, answered quietly. He was a man of few words, but the words he chose were always thoughtful. Most people respected him for that calm, steady presence he carried. It was near the livestock stalls that he first saw her. Elena. She was not just tall, she was striking in her presence. Her height made her stand out, but it was her confidence and the easy way she carried herself that drew Henry's attention. She had long, flowing hair that caught the sunlight, and her eyes sparkled with curiosity as she examined the animals. There was something vibrant about her, a kind of energy that seemed to fill the space around her. She laughed freely at a minor mishap with a calf that had wandered slightly away from its pen, her voice bright and musical. Henry, who rarely smiled in public, felt a small grin forming on his face. Elena noticed him almost immediately. Perhaps it was the calm way he watched the animals, or maybe it was the quiet dignity in his posture. Whatever it was, she found herself curious about the older man who seemed so different from anyone else at the fair. She walked over, towering over most of the crowd, and greeted him with a playful tease. "You're too old for me," she said with a laugh, clearly enjoying her own boldness. The words were light-hearted, but they carried a challenge. Henry looked at her, unshaken. He had heard many comments over the years, some kind and some not so kind. He knew that life often judged people too quickly, based on appearances or age. Yet, there was something about Elena that made him pause. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he studied her for a moment, noting the intelligence in her eyes and the warmth in her smile. Finally, he replied with a calm, almost mysterious tone. "Am I?" The simplicity of his words made her laugh even more. There was no arrogance in his voice, no defensiveness, just a quiet confidence that intrigued her. For the rest of the morning, they exchanged light conversation. Elena asked questions about the calves, the ranch, and the work that Henry did each day. He answered with patience, explaining the care and effort that went into raising the animals, the importance of feeding schedules, and the challenges of maintaining such a large piece of land. Elena listened intently, clearly impressed by his knowledge and dedication. She asked thoughtful questions, not just to satisfy curiosity but because she genuinely wanted to understand. Henry, in turn, found her questions refreshing. It was rare to meet someone so genuinely interested in his work and in him as a person. As the day went on, they moved from the livestock stalls to the fairgrounds. Elena pointed out different attractions, the pie-eating contest, the games, the handmade crafts. Henry followed her lead, sometimes offering quiet commentary, sometimes simply watching her with a soft smile. He was surprised at how easy it was to be around her. Her laughter was contagious, and her energy was invigorating. For the first time in years, He felt a spark of something he hadn't felt since his wife had passed, a sense of excitement and anticipation. Despite the crowd, there were moments of quiet intimacy. At one point, they stopped near a small pond where ducks were swimming. Elena watched them for a long time, commenting on their playful movements. Henry stood beside her, noticing the way she observed the world with a mix of humor and wonder. He realized that she had a way of making ordinary things feel extraordinary. He found himself enjoying these small moments more than the rest of the fair. It wasn't just her height or her boldness that drew him in, it was her perspective on life, her energy, and her ability to find joy in simple things. By the afternoon, the fair began to wind down. People started packing up their stalls, and the air filled with the scent of dust and smoke from the lingering barbecue stands. Elena turned to Henry and smiled, a little shyly this time. "I should be going," she said. "It was fun, though." Henry nodded, understanding. He had felt the same reluctance to part ways. There was an unspoken acknowledgement between them that this encounter was different from any other. As they parted, Henry watched her walk away, her tall frame moving confidently through the crowd. He felt an unfamiliar mixture of emotions: curiosity, admiration, and a hint of hope. Elena, too, felt a strange pull in her chest. She had teased him earlier about being too old, but now she wondered if perhaps there was more to him than she had first realized. The memory of his calm, thoughtful demeanor stayed with her long after she left the fairgrounds. That evening, Henry returned to the ranch, but his mind kept drifting back to Elena. He went through his usual routine, feeding the cattle, checking fences, and preparing for the next day, but each task felt a little lighter, a little more meaningful because of the encounter. He realized that life had a way of surprising even those who thought they had seen it all. Sometimes, the most unexpected meetings could leave the deepest impressions. Elena, meanwhile, found herself thinking about Henry as she walked home. She had met many people in her life, but few had left such a lasting impression. There was something about him that defied her expectations, something quiet yet powerful. She knew she would want to see him again, not just out of curiosity, but because she felt a connection that was rare and unexpected. As the sun set over the countryside, both Henry and Elena carried the memory of that day with them. It was a simple encounter at a local fair, yet it had planted a seed of curiosity, admiration, and a hint of something more. Neither could have predicted where this meeting would lead, but both sensed that their lives had just taken an unexpected turn. For Henry, it was a reminder that life still held surprises, even at 60. For Elena, it was a lesson that sometimes the most intriguing people were those who didn't fit neatly into the world's expectations. And so, a quiet connection was formed between the rancher and the young giant woman, one that would grow, face challenges, and ultimately transform both of their lives in ways neither of them could yet imagine. After their first encounter at the county fair, Henry Lawson found himself thinking about Elena more often than he expected. There was something about her presence that lingered in his mind, like a fresh breeze stirring the quiet life he had grown used to. He had lived on his ranch for decades, tending to cattle, repairing fences, and walking the fields in silence, but her laughter and energy seemed to follow him everywhere. Even when he was deep in his work, checking the fences or feeding the calves, he would catch himself imagining her tall figure moving through the barn, asking curious questions, or laughing at some small mischief of the animals. Elena, too, found her thoughts drifting toward Henry. She had met many people in her life, students, friends, and neighbors, but few had captured her attention so quickly. There was a quiet strength about him, a patience that she didn't often see in others. And yet, there was also warmth in his smile, an honesty in his words, and a sense of calm that made her feel at ease. She replayed the moments at the fair over and over in her mind. His steady gaze, the way he spoke about his work, and the gentle way he allowed her to express her curiosity. For the first time, she wondered if perhaps there was more to life than what she had always known, and if this connection might lead to something meaningful. A week later, Henry was surprised when Elena showed up at his ranch. She explained that she had wanted to learn more about farm life and asked if she could spend a day helping out. Henry hesitated at first. He wasn't used to visitors, and especially not someone so young and lively. But when he saw the genuine excitement in her eyes, he agreed. "All right," he said, "but only if you're ready for hard work." Elena grinned, her eyes sparkling with challenge. "I can handle it," she replied confidently. The day began early, as Henry led Elena through the routine of the ranch. She learned to feed the cattle, scoop hay into the troughs, and even help move the calves to different pens. At first, she struggled with the physical work. Her height gave her strength, but the tasks required patience, precision, and endurance. Henry guided her gently, correcting her technique with kind words rather than criticism. "It's not just about strength," he said. "It's about knowing the animals, understanding them, and taking your time." Elena listened carefully, nodding and asking questions, eager to absorb every detail. As they worked side by side, a rhythm began to form between them. Elena admired Henry's knowledge of the land and the animals. Noticing how he could anticipate a calf's movements, or spot a problem in the fence before it became serious, she realized that his experience was invaluable, and that his age, which she had initially thought was a barrier, was actually a testament to his wisdom. Henry, in turn, watched Elena with growing respect. She was curious, intelligent, and unafraid to try new things. He appreciated her energy and her willingness to learn, qualities that reminded him of his younger self. By midday, they paused for lunch under the shade of a large oak tree. Elena brought sandwiches, and Henry poured lemonade from a jug he had kept cool in the shade. They sat together, watching the fields and the animals, and the conversation shifted from work to life itself. Elena asked Henry about his childhood, his family, and the stories of the ranch over the years. Henry shared memories of his youth, his wife, and the lessons he had learned from living close to the land. Elena listened intently, occasionally laughing at a humorous anecdote or expressing sympathy for a difficult moment. The afternoon sun cast a warm glow over the ranch, and for a moment, it felt as though the world had shrunk to just the two of them and the quiet beauty surrounding them. As the day went on, they continued working together, building not just fences and pens, but also a growing sense of trust and companionship. Elena learned quickly, not just because she was eager, but because Henry encouraged her to think and understand, rather than simply follow instructions. He taught her how to read the behavior of the animals, how to notice subtle signs of distress, and how to anticipate problems before they happened. Elena marveled at his patience and how effortlessly he seemed to manage the ranch. She realized that his age was not a weakness, but a strength, a lifetime of experience that gave him insight and skill far beyond her own. During breaks, Elena and Henry often wandered through the fields, talking about everything from books to music, and even to their dreams and fears. Elena shared stories of her childhood, growing up in a town far from the ranch, and the challenges of being taller than most people her age. Henry listened carefully, offering understanding and sometimes gentle advice. He found her honesty refreshing, and her laughter infectious. The differences in their ages and backgrounds, which might have seemed like a barrier to others, became a bridge between them, a way to share perspectives and learn from each other. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the fields, Elena realized how much she had enjoyed the day. She felt a sense of accomplishment and pride in the work she had done. But more importantly, she felt a connection with Henry that she had not expected. She looked at him, noticing the way his eyes softened when he smiled, and the quiet confidence in his movements. Despite the teasing remark she had made at the fair about him being too old, she began to see him in a new light. Age, she realized, was only a number. And what truly mattered was the kindness, patience, and wisdom a person carried within. Henry, too, felt a shift within himself. He had lived for many years, without expecting new connections or surprises. Yet, Elena's presence had stirred something inside him, an appreciation for life, laughter, and companionship that he had thought was behind him. He admired her courage, her curiosity, and her willingness to engage fully with the world around her. He saw potential not just in her ability to learn the ways of the ranch, but in the way she challenged him to see things differently, to embrace the unexpected joys that life could offer. Over the next few weeks, Elena visited the ranch more often. Each visit strengthened their bond, As they worked together, shared stories, and navigated small challenges on the ranch, there were days of laughter when the calves played mischievously, and moments of quiet reflection when they watched the sun set over the fields. Their friendship deepened naturally, built on respect, shared experiences, and an unspoken understanding that neither was trying to rush or force anything. They simply enjoyed each other's company, discovering common ground despite the apparent differences in age and life experience. As time passed, Elena found herself increasingly comfortable around Henry. She noticed the little things, the way he remembered details about her stories, the care with which he treated the animals, and the quiet wisdom in his advice. She began to realize that her initial hesitation about their age difference was fading, replaced by admiration and genuine affection. She laughed more easily with him, asked more questions, and sometimes stayed late into the evening, just enjoying his company and the calm, comforting atmosphere of the ranch. Henry, in turn, felt a growing fondness for Elena. He appreciated her energy and curiosity, but also the thoughtfulness she brought to their conversations. He enjoyed teaching her, not just about ranch life, but about patience, observation, and respect for the world around them. He saw in her a bright mind, a kind heart, and a courage that reminded him of his younger self. Their friendship, rooted in shared experiences and mutual respect, began to evolve in subtle ways, though neither spoke of it aloud. Despite the playful teasing and her early comment about him being too old, Elena began to see Henry not just as a mentor or friend, but as someone she could trust and rely on. She felt comfortable sharing her thoughts, dreams, and fears with him, knowing that he would listen without judgment. And Henry, quietly, began to hope that this unexpected connection might grow into something deeper, even if neither of them knew exactly what the future would hold. By the end of the summer, the ranch had become a place of learning, laughter, and discovery for both of them. What had begun as a casual encounter at a county fair had blossomed into a meaningful friendship, one that challenged their assumptions, bridged generational gaps, and brought joy to their otherwise ordinary lives. And though neither Elena nor Henry could predict what the future would bring, they both sensed that this bond, built on patience, curiosity, and mutual respect, was the beginning of something rare and extraordinary. As the friendship between Henry and Elena deepened, life on the ranch felt brighter than it had in years. They laughed together, worked together, and shared quiet moments under the sun-dappled trees or beside the gently grazing cattle. Their bond had grown naturally, almost effortlessly, and both had begun to sense that it was becoming more than friendship. But with that growing closeness came doubts, both internal and external. Elena began to notice how often she thought about Henry during the day. She remembered the way he smiled when a calf finally obeyed her instructions, or the gentle patience he showed when she struggled with a fence post. She admired his wisdom, his calm demeanor, and his ability to find joy in the simplest things, and yet, she couldn't shake the thought that people might not understand their connection. The townsfolk had started noticing them together more frequently, and whispers had begun to spread. Some seemed curious, while others were more judgmental, muttering about the unusual pairing between a young woman and an older man. One afternoon, as they repaired a broken fence along the far edge of the ranch, Elena finally spoke aloud the fears she had been holding back. "Henry," she began, hesitating slightly, "I don't know. Maybe we shouldn't be seen together so much. People might talk, they might think it's strange." She glanced at him nervously, expecting a lecture or a dismissal, but Henry merely nodded, listening carefully. "I understand," he said softly. "I can't control what people think, Elena. All we can do is live honestly and with respect for one another." His calm response surprised her. She had expected frustration, or even anger, but instead, she felt a warmth spreading through her chest. His words weren't defensive, they were steady and reassuring, a reflection of his years of experience and patience. Elena bit her lip, trying to explain her own thoughts. "It's not just about what they think. Sometimes I wonder, maybe it's wrong. You're older, and I'm younger. Will it even work? Will we fit together?" Her voice trembled slightly as she spoke, revealing the vulnerability she had been hiding. Henry placed a gentle hand on the post they were repairing, looking out over the fields before turning his gaze back to her. "Age is only a number," he said slowly. "It doesn't define who we are, or what we feel, or how we care for each other. I have spent years alone, Elena, and I know what matters most is honesty, respect, and kindness. That's what builds a connection that can last." His words stayed with Elena long after that day. She began to see him in a new light, not just as a kind, patient friend, but as someone who could be a partner in life, someone who would treat her with care and respect. Yet, the fear of public opinion still weighed on her. She had grown up hearing stories of judgment and misunderstanding, and the whispers of townsfolk seemed to confirm her unease. She wondered whether they could truly be together openly, or if they would always face scrutiny. Meanwhile, Henry noticed her hesitation and chose not to push her. He respected her feelings and gave her space, knowing that trust and understanding could not be rushed. He continued to involve her in the daily life of the ranch, teaching her skills, sharing stories, and creating opportunities for them to laugh and work together. His patience only strengthened her admiration for him, showing her that love and respect were not about age or appearance, but about character and integrity. Despite the doubts, there were moments when Elena allowed herself to feel hope. She remembered the day they had moved the young calves to a new pen, laughing when one mischievous calf kept escaping. Henry had worked alongside her, showing gentle guidance and encouragement, and she had felt a sense of partnership she had never experienced before. In that moment, she realized that their bond was genuine, built on trust, shared effort, and a deep understanding of each other. Evenings on the ranch became their favorite time. They would sit together on the porch after a long day, watching the sun dip below the hills and listening to the soft sounds of the countryside. Elena would often rest her hands on her knees, leaning back slightly as she spoke about her dreams, her fears, or the simple joys of the day. Henry would listen attentively, offering advice when needed, but mostly just sharing the silence and the comfort of his presence. These quiet moments allowed them to connect in ways that went beyond words, and slowly, Elena's fear began to ease. One day, as they worked to repair a section of the fence damaged by a recent storm, Elena spoke more openly about her feelings. "Henry, I think I care about you, but I'm scared. I don't want us to be judged, and I don't want to hurt you if things don't work out." Her voice trembled slightly, betraying the sincerity behind her words. Henry paused, resting on his knees, and looked at her with a calm, steady gaze. "Elena, caring about someone is never something to be afraid of. The world may judge, but what matters is how we treat each other, how we respect and support each other. If we are honest and true, that is what counts most. Everything else will work itself out over time." Her heart felt lighter after that conversation. Henry's words reminded her that love wasn't about fitting perfectly into society's expectations. It was about the connection between two people, their shared experiences, and the respect and understanding they offered one another. She began to allow herself to imagine a future where their age difference was irrelevant, replaced instead by affection, trust, and companionship. But life was not without its challenges. One afternoon, a group of townsfolk came by the ranch, ostensibly to inspect the cattle for sale, but their thinly veiled comments and sideways glances made Elena uncomfortable. They whispered about the unusual friendship, casting skeptical looks at the older rancher and the young woman working by his side. Elena felt the old fears resurface, her insecurities about judgment threatening to overshadow the trust she had built with Henry. Henry noticed her discomfort immediately. Without drawing attention, he placed a protective hand on her shoulder and guided her to a quieter part of the ranch. "Ignore them," he said quietly. "Their words mean nothing. What we build here is ours alone, and that is far more important than what anyone else thinks." His reassurance grounded her. She realized that with Henry, she felt safe, respected, and understood, no matter what others might say. Over time, Elena began to notice small changes in how she saw Henry. She admired his strength, not just physical, though he was strong in that way, but the strength of his character, the patience with which he approached life, and the wisdom he carried from decades of experience. She saw that his age brought depth to his perspective, allowing him to face challenges with calm and careful thought. In contrast, she saw her own youth as energy and curiosity, a willingness to question, explore, and learn. Together, they balanced each other in ways she had never imagined. Henry, too, reflected on the growing bond he shared with Elena. He admired her courage, her intelligence, and her determination to face challenges head-on. Her presence brought light and energy to the ranch, breaking the monotony he had grown used to over the years. He found himself looking forward to her visits, to her laughter, and to the simple joy of sharing his world with someone who genuinely appreciated it. In many ways, her youth and vitality reminded him of what it felt like to be younger, while his experience offered her guidance and stability. One quiet evening, after a long day of repairing fences and tending to the cattle, Elena looked at Henry and said, almost shyly, "I think I'm ready. Ready to see where we can go." Henry's heart lifted. He had waited patiently for this moment, knowing that Elena needed time to overcome doubt and fear. He smiled gently and nodded, understanding that the connection between them was real, deep, and worth nurturing. Though the path ahead was uncertain, they felt confident facing it together. They knew there would be challenges, whispers from townsfolk, societal expectations, and personal insecurities, but they also knew that their respect, trust, and growing affection would help them overcome any obstacle. They had built a foundation strong enough to weather storms, a partnership rooted in patience, understanding, and mutual care. As the stars began to twinkle over the ranch that night, Henry and Elena sat together on the porch, sharing a quiet smile. They did not need to speak of love yet. It was present in the small gestures, the way they worked together, the laughter they shared, and the trust that had grown between them. Both knew that, despite doubts and fears, they were building something rare and beautiful, something that could not be measured by age or societal expectations. In the weeks and months that followed, their relationship continued to deepen. Elena's initial fears slowly faded as she saw Henry's unwavering patience and care, and Henry's admiration for her courage and curiosity only grew. They faced doubts together, supported each other through moments of insecurity, and gradually learned that love, trust, and respect were far stronger than the judgments of others. By the end of the season, their bond had become unshakable. Elena had realized that the world's opinion mattered far less than the connection she shared with Henry, and Henry had come to understand that it was never too late to experience joy, companionship, and even love again. Together, they had faced doubt, prejudice, and fear, and had emerged stronger, more connected, and ready to embrace whatever the future held. By the time the next spring rolled around, Henry and Elena had grown inseparable. Their friendship had blossomed into a deep bond that neither could ignore. Every day on the ranch brought moments of shared laughter, hard work, and quiet reflection. They had learned to rely on each other in ways that went beyond simple companionship. The once unspoken connection had become a natural part of their lives, a rhythm as steady and comforting as the sun rising over the fields each morning. Elena had grown more confident in herself and in her feelings. The doubts she had carried for months, the fears about judgment, about age differences, about whether their bond could withstand the scrutiny of the town had begun to fade. She had come to understand that the opinions of others were irrelevant compared to the respect, kindness, and genuine affection she shared with Henry. She admired his patience, his strength, and the quiet wisdom that guided him through every day. In Henry, she saw not just a mentor or a friend, but a true partner, someone who valued her for who she was and never treated her with anything less than respect. Henry, too, felt a shift within himself. He had spent much of his life alone, finding comfort in the routine of the ranch and the familiarity of his work. Yet Elena had brought new light into his days. Her energy, curiosity, and laughter reminded him that life could still surprise him, even at 60. He admired her determination, her intelligence, and her willingness to face challenges with courage. Most of all, he cherished her kindness and the way she looked at the world with wonder, humor, and an open heart. He realized that he had found in her not just a companion, but someone who made him feel truly alive again. One warm afternoon, After a long day tending to the cattle and repairing fences, Elena turned to Henry with a thoughtful expression. "Henry," she said softly, "I think I'm ready. Ready to show the world that we care for each other." She paused, searching his face for a reaction. "I want to be with you, fully, without hiding or worrying about what anyone thinks." Henry looked at her, a gentle smile spreading across his face. He had waited patiently for this moment, knowing that Elena needed time to come to it herself. "Elena," he said, his voice calm and steady, "I have felt the same way for a long time. I care for you deeply. What matters most is not what others think, but the bond we share, the respect and trust we have built, and the joy we bring each other." Her heart swelled with warmth and relief. She reached out, taking his hand, feeling the strength and steadiness in his grip. In that moment, there was no doubt, no hesitation, only the clear understanding that their bond was real and enduring. They had faced uncertainty, doubt, and whispered judgment together, and now they were ready to embrace their connection openly. The weeks that followed were filled with quiet, beautiful moments of acceptance and love. They continued to work side by side on the ranch, sharing meals, laughter, and conversation. Each day, they learned more about each other's strengths, weaknesses, dreams, and fears. Elena marveled at how Henry managed the ranch with both discipline and care, and Henry admired Elena's courage, intelligence, and ability to find joy in simple things. Together, they balanced each other perfectly, combining experience and energy, wisdom, and curiosity. But life outside the ranch was not always easy. Some townsfolk continued to whisper and stare, questioning the unusual pairing. Elena felt it most keenly in the beginning, noticing the sideways glances and quiet comments as they walked through the market or attended local events. Yet Henry's unwavering support and the genuine love they shared gave her the strength to ignore judgment. "We live for ourselves, Elena," he reminded her gently, "not for the opinions of others." Slowly, the town began to notice something different. The whispers of doubt turned into curiosity. And then, eventually, acceptance. People observed the genuine care Henry and Elena showed for each other, the small acts of kindness, the respect, and the way they worked together. The community saw a love that was honest and strong, built not on appearances, but on mutual respect and shared effort. Even the skeptics could not deny the happiness that radiated from the couple, and one by one, people began to accept that their bond was real and meaningful. Elena began to feel lighter, freer, and more confident in her relationship with Henry. The fear of judgment faded, replaced by the joy of living authentically and openly with someone who truly understood and cared for her. She realized that love was not about age, height, or background. It was about connection, trust, and respect. With Henry, she had found a love that transcended societal expectations and brought her a sense of peace she had never known before. Henry, too, felt a sense of contentment he had not experienced in decades. He had loved before, and he had mourned. But with Elena, he discovered a new kind of joy. He felt alive again, inspired by her energy, laughter, and perspective on life. The ranch, once a place of routine and solitude, had become a home filled with warmth, companionship, and the promise of a shared future. One evening, as the sun set over the rolling hills, Elena and Henry sat together on the porch of the ranch house. The sky was painted with hues of orange, pink, and gold, reflecting in the calm eyes of the cattle grazing nearby. Elena rested her head on Henry's shoulder, feeling the steady rhythm of his breathing and the comforting warmth of his presence. "I never imagined life could feel like this," she whispered. "I feel complete, happy, safe." Henry squeezed her hand gently, looking out over the fields with a quiet smile. "Life is full of surprises, Elena," he said softly. "Sometimes the most unexpected paths lead to the greatest joys. I never expected to find this kind of happiness at my age, but here we are. And I wouldn't trade it for anything." As the stars appeared one by one in the night sky, they talked about the future, about the plans they could make together. the improvements they wanted to make on the ranch, and the dreams they still hoped to fulfill. They spoke openly about challenges, knowing that life would not always be easy, but confident that their partnership could face whatever came their way. They dreamed together, laughed together, and quietly promised to support each other through the years ahead. Over time, their bond became an example to others. People who had once doubted or judged them began to admire the couple's dedication, respect, and love for one another. Children watched them work together, learning that true connection is built on understanding and kindness, not appearances. Friends and neighbors sought their advice and guidance, inspired by the harmony and balance they had created in their lives. Henry and Elena became a symbol of love that defied convention, proving that happiness is found not in fitting expectations, but in embracing authenticity. Their daily life continued with a mix of work and joy. Mornings were spent tending to the cattle and fields, afternoons were filled with shared projects and quiet moments of conversation, and evenings were reserved for reflection, laughter, and the peaceful comfort of being together. They discovered new joys in the simple aspects of life, planting flowers in the garden, teaching local children about farm life, and exploring nearby trails hand in hand. Each day strengthened their bond, reinforcing the love, trust, and respect that had become the foundation of their relationship. As years passed, Henry and Elena's love remained steadfast. The initial fears, doubts, and societal whispers faded into distant memories. What endured was the deep, unwavering connection they had built together, a love rooted in patience, understanding, and shared experience. They faced life's challenges with resilience and faced joys with gratitude, knowing that they had found something truly rare, a partnership that nourished their hearts and souls. In the end, Henry and Elena proved that age, appearance, or societal expectations could never define the strength of a true connection. What mattered most was the way they treated each other with respect, kindness, and unwavering support. They showed that love is about trust, shared experience, and the willingness to embrace life's unexpected paths. Together, they had built a life filled with laughter, work, and quiet, enduring happiness. A life that reflected the best of both of them, and a love that would last for many years to come. As they stood together one evening, watching the sunset over the golden fields of the ranch, Elena leaned into Henry and whispered, "I'm glad I trusted my heart." Henry smiled, squeezing her hand gently. "And I'm glad you did," he replied. "This life, this love, it's more than I could have ever imagined." With the stars twinkling above and the gentle sounds of the countryside around them, Henry and Elena embraced the life they had chosen together. They knew that challenges might come, but they also knew that the bond they shared, built on respect, patience, and love, was unshakable. And so, the ranch became not just a home, but a testament to the power of unexpected connections, the joy of companionship, and the enduring strength of love that transcends age, fear, and expectation.